Most people will tell you relationships are hard. In fact, if you went into a bar and said, oh my God, relationships are so hard, you'd get a bunch of people saying, yeah, I know it, don't need a relationship, divorce rate, fighting, blah, blah, blah. Relationships are not actually hard, okay? Comparing relationships to meeting girls is hard. Relationships, by comparison, are phenomenally easier. But most guys make a few key mistakes that make things hard for themselves. I'm gonna save you from those mistakes right now in this video. Consider this. When you first met your girlfriend, she didn't know anything about you. You were anonymous, you had no value in her eyes, you were the next random Joe Schmoe on the street. Now that you're in a relationship with her, she loves you, she respects you, she has had sex with you, she's attached to you, she's built commonality with you. In theory, you're in a much better position than you were before. Also, you have shown the charisma and skill to attract her from scratch. So you are in a phenomenally better position. And yet, so many guys still mess it up from here. So what I'm gonna get into are the 5 biggest mistakes most guys make. So let's start with one of the biggest mistakes guys make, and this is quite simply being lazy. All right, when you first met the girl, when you went out and met her at a bar or a nightclub, or when you took her on a date, I promise you, you brushed your teeth, you combed your hair, you showered, you put on a good looking outfit, you put your best foot forward, you had a plan for the night, you tried to say interesting things, you tried to put effort into flirting. Fast forward to 2 months into a relationship, all of a sudden, you're hanging out on the couch, you know, eating potato chips in front of her, not wanting to go out and do something fun. You fundamentally have become a different person than what you sold her on you were going to be, right? You showed her your best, and then you showed her your worst, and you expected her to just keep remembering you at your best, even though on an ongoing basis, day in, day out, you're showing her your worst, right? Technically, it's false advertising, right? You promised her an ambitious, go-getting, fun, charismatic, flirty guy, and you presented her with a lazy guy who doesn't want to do anything but watch movies and have sex. And girls like sex too, but you know, they want a little more than just that in a man. So why do guys become lazy? Well, a big part of it is they just become complacent. They're assuming the relationship is there. They're assuming they've done the hard work and now they get to just sit back and enjoy it. And you can enjoy it, but you also have to keep doing the hard work. It's kind of equivalent to getting your dream job, right? You get your dream job, you're on that high, everything's great, but a month in, you have to actually do the work that that dream job requires. You can't just go around like, you know, showing people, hey, I got my dream job, my life's good, I'm gonna pick up paychecks. Sooner or later, if you don't do the work, your boss is gonna fire you from your dream job. Same thing with relationships, right? When you first came to this channel and didn't have a relationship yet, and I told you that you have to be your best self and not your worst self when you go out and meet girls. The same applies once you have met the girl, right? You have now, instead of talking to dozens or hundreds of girls, you're talking to one particular girl, but you still have to keep showing her all the positive traits that got her attracted to you in the first place. You still have to keep stepping up as a man. Common symptoms of laziness might include stopping going to the gym because you don't have anyone to look good for anymore. Never mind your girlfriends. Not leaving the house and doing fun activities, instead sitting in front of the TV all the time. Not doing proper foreplay when having sex and just taking it for granted. Falling into boring platonic conversation rather than flirting because you assume the girl already likes you, so what's the point? And not following through on all those amazing life plans you told the girl you had for yourself on the first date. Dating is the job interview, the relationship is doing the job. So if you interviewed really well and then did a shitty job, you should not be surprised when you get fired. Instead of don't be lazy, how about keep striving and improving, all right? Instead of just assuming that your girlfriend is there and you have a relationship, instead make it a goal to make the relationship better each and every week. Or instead of sitting around and getting lazy and unambitious because now you're comfortable, instead take this time in relationship to focus all that time you're putting into getting good with girls and focus on your career, your fitness, your other goals in life, and become this like skyrocketing value so that your girlfriend will be impressed by it, and so that if you ever were to break up, you're coming back into the dating market at a higher value level than you left it at. The next major reason relationships end is due to lack of trust. If she doesn't trust you, the relationship is likely to end. You see, what is a relationship fundamentally? A relationship is a contract between two people. It's an agreement about what you are to each other, how you're going to behave together, and what rules you're going to follow in life. If you stick to that contract, it builds trust. If you break that contract, it destroys trust, and it literally destroys the relationship, because again, what is the relationship but that contract? That contract, that agreement of what you are to each other is the difference between two people who find each other attractive and two people who are in a relationship, okay? That's what makes the relationship. And so, if you have agreed to certain things as the terms of your relationship, uphold those terms. If you have agreed to be monogamous and you want to keep the relationship, don't cheat. As a general rule, act with your relationship partner's interests in mind. Don't just be looking out for yourself, look out for your girlfriend's interests. If you're doing selfish things that hurt her and she finds out about it, she's going to be hurt by it. It's pretty obvious. When you're in a relationship, you're not just looking out for your happiness, and she's not just looking out for her happiness. You're looking out for the collective net happiness of both of you. That's what you're trying to maximize with your decisions. If you have that in mind, you'll probably be trustworthy as a boyfriend. If you don't, you'll probably be untrustworthy as a boyfriend. Here's the thing to understand with trust. You can have all the value in the world as a man, but if the girl doesn't trust you, she doesn't see herself as having access to that value. So each time you breach trust, you're essentially fractionalizing your value, right? So if you're a guy who's a 10 out of 10 and she can only halfway trust you, now you're equivalent to her to a guy that's a 5 out of 10, and anybody above that, she'll want to replace you with, okay? So value is what's possible to her. Trust is what fraction of that she can actually attain, what fraction of it's actually real to her in her life. If you maintain that trust, your value is accentuated. If you lose that trust, the value that is applicable to her or accessible to her diminishes very quickly, and the girl will see that, get scared, and leave. By the way, you don't have to be 100% perfect in this all the time. Sometimes you will mess up. Sometimes you may do something untrustworthy, or sometimes you may misstep, etc. Here's the good news. Because that relationship is a contract, the more precedent, the more history you have of following that contract, the more trust is built up. So if you break that contract day one, there may not be a lot of forgivability. If you've upheld your contract for 5 years and done a good job of it, and you have a little slip, on year 5+ a day, that's not gonna be as big of a deal, because the girl has a history of you being a good partner, following your contract, being trustworthy, etc. So trust does build over time. You get a deeper and deeper well of trust the more history you have together. In the next point, we'll talk about the contract itself. So we've talked about fulfilling your side of the relationship contract, but what about the contract itself? Most guys make the mistake of putting themselves into relationship obligations that they would prefer not to be in. Basically, they set the relationship up under terms that are not good for them. So for example, if they want to see a girl a few times a week, but they set up an expectation they're gonna see her every single day of the week, and then they get annoyed that the girl won't leave them alone, that is the man's fault for setting up that expectation in the first place. Or for example, if the guy wants a relationship that's kind of equal, where he pays for some things, the girl pays for some things, but he sets it up by courting her and taking her to a series of expensive dinners day after day after day, spending a lot of money, and she never lifts a finger, then he's setting up a precedent of one type of relationship, which isn't the type of relationship he actually wants. Or let's say a guy wants a relationship where he and the girl just kind of hang out at his place, go about their lives, enjoy each other's company, have sex occasionally, and talk, but yet he sets it up by taking her on all these crazy adventures to try and woo her and win her over, and then he wonders why she's disappointed when the adventures stop. You see, you want to set up the relationship in a way that the expectations match the reality you actually want, all right? So it helps to begin with the end in mind. When you're meeting girls from the start, you want to think about, down the road, once I know this girl, what do I envision my ideal relationship to be? If I close my eyes and think about my perfect life with this girl, and little asterisk, by the way, this has to work for her as well. If it is that she makes all the money, bends over backwards for you, is your sex slave, compliments you all the time, and you lay in bed and never lift a finger, that's probably not a tenable relationship strategy. So you need a relationship structure that is beneficial to both parties, but that is going to make you happy. Don't set yourself up to be unhappy by promising the girl things you don't want to deliver down the line. By the way, the things you contribute to the relationship don't have to be inherently tangible. I actually have had girls offer me essentially that relationship I just described as untenable, but what I was bringing to the table was my personality, my charm, my flirtation, my ambition, and being good in bed. So I still was bringing things to the table even in that scenario. If you bring nothing to the table, she'll go elsewhere to get more than nothing. The next relationship killing mistake, and this is an absolutely huge one, becoming too needy. See, when you first met the girl, she didn't know she could have you. She probably thought you had other girls who were attracted to you, either because it was implied or because just you're a high value guy, so you must, right? But as you got comfortable with her, as you got complacent with her, as you started to spend too much time around her, it's very easy for her to start to feel like, oh, you're obvious, you're needy, you're easy, you're always there. And when you're too available, the girl can start to take you for granted. She can start to disdain you. She can start to have too much of your time. She can start to think, what happened with this guy who had so much going on in his life, but now he's just wrapped up in me and I'm his whole world. It's a little bit kind of gross for the girl. You need to have a life outside of her, okay? Your life outside of her is the value and interest and uniqueness you can bring to the table. If you become completely wrapped up in her, then you no longer are contributing anything unique. And a girl of any kind of caliber, a girl who has any kind of charm and allure, can get plenty of guys to kiss their ass and be needy for them. That's not attractive for her. She wants the guy who has something going on in his own life that she can be needy for, that she can respect, right? You have to maintain your independence in a relationship. Here's a really insidious thing that happens in a relationship. Girl likes guy, thinks of him as like out of her reach, really is attracted to him, wants more of his time. So she asks for more time, and he gives it to her, and she's happier. And then she thinks, you know what? He's still kind of out of my reach. I want more of his time. She asks for more of his time, and he gives it to her, and she's happier. She asks for more of his time, and he gives it to her, and now she starts to think, why is this guy so easy? And now she's happier with the relationship, but less attracted to him. But because she's less attracted to him, she wants even more from him. If he's this lower value guy, she needs even more commitment from him, so she asks for more commitment. He gives more, and now she's even less attracted to him, and eventually she's no longer attracted to him at all. She's disdainful. He's completely given everything to her, and she no longer likes him, and the relationship ends. This is a phenomenon that in the past has been called the poison drip, because the girl essentially poisoned her own relationship by accident, by asking for more, getting more, and creating a relationship that in the end wasn't good for either of them. So it's your job as a man to keep your boundaries and not allow that to happen. And girls will ask for this, because if you are a high value guy, they are going to want more from you. And in getting a little bit more from you, they'll be happier. The problem is if they keep doing that and doing that and doing that, eventually it will poison the entire relationship. It will poison the value that underlies the relationship. It will poison the uniqueness and interest that created the relationship in the first place. So please have your boundaries. Please stop these types of things from happening in your relationships. Listen, if you've watched any of the other videos on this channel, you've seen that in the courtship process, neediness is unattractive. The same holds true in a relationship. Just because you're now with the girl doesn't mean that suddenly it's okay to do one of the most unattractive things you can as a man. You still need to remain secure, non-needy. You still need to have your own life even when you're in a relationship. The final relationship mistake I'm going to present is actually very different from the others because it happens right at the start of a relationship rather than during the relationship. But this mistake is a mistake of picking the wrong girl. And there's a lot of versions of this mistake that you want to avoid. The first and most common is picking the wrong girl out of neediness or picking the wrong girl out of lack of abundance. So a lot of guys, especially if they weren't good with girls to begin with, as soon as there is a girl that's fairly attractive that will have them in a relationship, they rush into that relationship and they don't consider, is this really the best girl for me? They're in a relationship just to be in a relationship, not because it is the best relationship for them. The next common mistake of picking the wrong girl is to pick based on resume versus picking on relationship. So if you have a girl that went to Harvard and is a doctor and is really rich and is really beautiful, but the actual time you spend with her is antagonistic and no fun, and she's actually mean and an awful person to you, that is not a healthy relationship, even if the girl has an amazing resume, and even if your friends are like, oh my God, how'd you get with her? You're so lucky. You fundamentally, if you're not happy in the relationship itself, you cannot have a relationship to prove things to others or to show something off to yourself or to correct your wounded ego from being rejected in high school. You need to have a relationship because the relationship itself makes you happy on a day-to-day basis. If that's not your standard, you're likely picking the wrong girl. And don't just rush into a relationship with the first girl that turns you on or is hot. All right? Try and be selective and find the girl you actually want, and importantly, the girl who makes you happy and who you can see an alignment with in your long-term relationship goals. Be a little bit selective, love yourself, believe in yourself enough to not just settle for the first girl, but to go for the right girl to have a relationship with. By the way, there's a reason I mentioned this one last, because I don't want you to automatically assume if you have relationship problems, it's this. I want you to actually work on the relationship and think about the relationship rather than automatically blaming the girl. However, there is such a thing as she's just the wrong girl, so I do want you to know that's a possibility too. If you are doing the right things in a relationship, you could oftentimes mitigate those as well. So women are by no means perfect. They do make tons of mistakes in relationships, but I want you to look to yourself first because you have a lot more control over your own behavior and your own contribution to a relationship than you do to hers. So look to what you can do to improve first before you automatically blame her, but also realize, yeah, women make mistakes too. So that was today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure and like and subscribe and put your questions and comments below for me to include on the next video and also for me to reply to. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.